So I am Patra. I am Ugandan-born. I am multicultural, multilingual. I professionally am a hypnotherapist. I do mostly self-concept and identity work. I am passionate about healing generational patterns and trauma, and also emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, so to say.
Mm.
I I live in Australia with my twin girls, and originally, obviously, I am from Uganda. So I think this is why we're doing this podcast, because of that language and communication part.
It's really true, by the way. The reason why it's not because you're from Uganda. It's because of the fact
That
that you've
is
had
the
such a multicultural life. Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
that's what I meant. But as you can also tell, I being multicultural and multilingual and just being able to speak more than one language, it makes you. I still have like uh not enough vocabulary word. Like
Mm,
maybe I'm gonna say something right in English, or the tone is not going to sound right. It's
mm,
something that I've obviously been healing.
mm,
And right now, I'm not very self conscious as I used to be. Obviously, I am Ugandan born, and my mother tongue is Luganda. And in our households, we do speak Luganda. However, when you're going to school, everything that's official is in English. So I feel like that, in a way, when I look at it now, it kind of made it seem like the mother tongue, the mother language, is
mm,
not really enough.
mm,
But also, I get where that came from. My country has so many different cultural languages, and they probably all want to be the national language.
mm,
And so I get where it came from, to just make it an official language. So
mhm,
everyone needs to learn English
mhm,
to be able to communicate. So language for me, it was always about communication. And the fact that we did have an official language, it kind of made it seem like a leveled playing field.
mm,
In a way, that's what I conceptualized when I was younger,
mm,
because, well, I cannot speak Lunyankole or Lutoro, but I can speak English. And if you're
mhm,
from Toro or you're from Western Uganda, you will be able to speak with me in English. That
mhm,
makes sense.
mhm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So the early experiences, language for me was always about like connection, to be able to communicate, to speak
Mm,
with the others. Historically, Uganda, a country, the whole country had kingdoms in with
mhm.
itself. So all these kingdoms were always like fighting to be the, you know,
Yeah.
the domination
Yeah.
one. But also we got colonized and we
Yeah.
had English people, and then it was like, oh, okay, so now I can put my guard down. These people know better than us.
Mm,
So now they still call Luganda Swahili, which is
mm,
disturbing because it's completely two different languages,
mhm. Okay.
even in movies. So Swahili is, East Africa originally had three countries, which was Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda.
Mhm.
And Kenya and Tanzania, they're all bigger than Uganda, and they all speak Swahili.
Got it. Okay.
So my suspicion is it was generalized that the whole East Africa, because the biggest part speaks Swahili,
Yeah.
but Uganda speaks Luganda,
Mm,
because even if you ask a Swahili speaking person, they would tell you that is not Swahili.
mhm. And so you were raised kind of with English being not an option then, right? Inside of school, it's
Yes, it
mandatory.
was never an option. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it was
And
it was something that you just had to learn.
yeah. And so that de-emphasizing of your mother language, that to you was more like, okay, it's a necessary move on the part of the country, right, to bring unity and communication in some way. Was there
Yeah.
ever a point where you started to feel like, but it's a little bit weird because, we're speaking this everywhere else, like in your family, I assume, or with friends, but then you have to switch into English for academic reasons?
Yeah, I feel like this was something that it was more, how I can say it in a way, when you don't know, you don't know.
Mm,
And when you've been raised like this until you fully become an adult, that's when you start to pick up the differences and start to look behind and go like, okay, that was probably not how I think things should have been.
mm,
Because my experience was growing up, it was always like I needed to learn English to be educated so that I can look educated, I can
mm,
look cool, that recognition that comes with, oh, she's educated and her English is really good. I guess that's how my English became good, because I
mm,
was always striving to be better. And it was always a wound of not being enough or not loving my heritage and my culture.
mm, mhm,
And when I grew up, that's when I realized that actually I did really hate my heritage and my culture,
mm.
because it was made to look like it didn't have a seat at the table. It didn't deserve a seat at the table. It just,
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the way.
yeah.
Yeah, and it did ache me up to now. I do try to, teach my twins a few Luganda words,
Mm.
as obviously I've healed the wound of that self-hate of my nationality. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional about this.
Get as emotional as you want, okay? So
What is happening to my
we can, oh my God.
body?
No, I appreciate the rawness and the vulnerability, of course, right? Because I do think
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense logically, right? Okay, you went to school, you were educated, therefore, like you have this level of English. Also, you want to show that you know, went through all that. However, when we cross into the territory of uh cultural or heritage based rejection, and that happens a lot with kids, right? Because kids are not really sure what to do. I can speak for myself, but also so many other people I know. We're adults now, but we were once children, going through all that and not realizing until later, like you were saying, now you look back and you're like, yeah, I actually think there were things that I learned to do as a result of this organization in society. So I do think it makes sense that you're getting very deep, very raw, very fast. Okay. It totally makes sense, is what we're here for. That's also the really beautiful part, that you're able to recognize, all right, that's a wound I have addressed, I've healed. I'm still, I don't think we ever kind of say, okay, well, we're healed, we're good.
Yeah.
It's not separate from you. It's more like you've carried it, but you've put it in its rightful place now. And so now with your daughters, you get to approach that differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's this something that I've noticed in myself recently. And you know how conceptually we can intellectualize a lot of things with the mind. I can move fast and I can have so much information, so many tools. And then you realize that your body cannot move that fast.
Mm,
And it used to be frustrating, because in the past I would have to beat myself up. Why am I feeling like this? Why is this happening? But then to just have that compassion for yourself and for your body, because your body keeps more memories than
mm,
our brains.
mhm, mhm.
So I can work through that one, and I know exactly what is happening, but my body does not. And
Mm.
sometimes it will show me that, oh, this is something that's still really, really important to me, really like important, and it's raw, it's vulnerable. So I think I just wanted to put that out there, because I have healed it. My body is still trying to work through it. So
Yeah.
I'm taking steps in front and then back to come with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so exactly what I go through as well, okay? Personally, I cry spontaneously like at times. It's really strange, but I'll be in some part of the world where something has triggered some dormant memory and it's not conscious, but all of a sudden I have this very visceral reaction, and it's only later when I'm reflecting like why, like in the middle of a train station, or I smell something that's like, I don't know what's happening right now, and it's so overwhelming, but it's
Yeah.
but it's so true what you're saying, that we hold all of this in terms of it really does not pass consciously. It's not something that is you can learn, like store and then delete, right? That's not the way it works. It's so much more
Yeah.
complicated than that. Uh, so I feel that's why I want to give the space for all of these approaches and all of these, all of these feelings that do need to actually come out when you recognize that this is your personal space around it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so Uganda, Australia, right? Was it direct? Remind me if there was a country in between.
No, there was no country in
Okay,
between. It's just
sorry, it's like
Uganda,
I just want to
Australia.
make sure. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Let's move into let's move into how you ended up in Australia then, because that's also for so many reasons fascinating, but yeah, kind of walk us through that.
So I studied and then finished my uni. And in Uganda, there's a lot of unemployment going on. And also culturally, professionally, mentally, everything is like, not to sound condescending, but it's like a time capsule with just a lot of things we're still stuck in the years behind. And so my mom made a decision for me to study abroad because employment wise, it's going to be great. And also to just give me a life that probably Uganda cannot give me, even if she's worked so hard to
Mm-hmm.
put us through education.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how I ended up in Australia to study, to have better opportunities, to really have this life. I'm so grateful because I had such a huge culture shock for 2 years, but I have healed a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
with how much it's exposed to me. And I don't think we realize I'm a little bit spiritual as well, but collectively you can tell the energy that is open and free abroad than because I went back to Uganda, I think, no, in 2023. And I love it there. Honestly, the time there, everything is just so laid back, everything is organic, and the people are great. But collectively, it's still very resistant. And I guess feeling that was very shocking,
Mm-hmm.
especially that I am an empath and I feel energy. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, when I was younger, if I told this to my parents, I'd probably be like, "This child, just like, spike her, she's got some demons going
Yeah,
on."
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up in Australia.
Yeah, I see. So just to go back to the resistance that you're talking about from the people, is it more like the everyday behaviors of society? Is it more pointed because you've left and come back? Like, is there a reason for the resistance? Or are you saying more you know?
Um, I think it's more of like there's a lot of fear, and I can feel the fear
Mm,
collectively. I do not know how to explain this,
mm, mm,
but it's not really of the way of living, because the way of living, that's just how the way of life is. It's like just it is, that's just how it is.
yeah.
I guess when you speak about mindsets and the way things are thought through, it's just different. But as someone who has healed and not healed, healing,
Mm,
and I've also healed my wound of leaving people behind. like I'm okay to meet everyone where they are at.
Mm.
So even if I notice something that someone said to me or the way they're thinking and I know the answer, but then it's probably going to be received in a very different way. I used to get frustrated and I'm like, but this is the solution. Just try this.
Mm.
And it was so frustrating at first, but then I realized that you I'm not responsible for anyone else's feelings,
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and choices. I can only be responsible for mine. And that's when I started to meet people where they're at.
Mm.
So if I have a conversation, I will have the conversation. Yes, I think I've just, when it's family or when it's friends, it's, I don't even know how to say this. It can feel like there's a lot of things that I want to talk about, but then I think finding that place in my heart and discipline to realize that, well, let's just meet them where they're at and let's do that in a
Mm.
loving way, not like in a way that it's frustrating or it's because I have been there. But now I can speak with someone and have a conversation and connect
Mm.
without trying to problem solve their life or
Mm.
problem solve what they're bringing to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I have been able to do that. And I'm grateful that I can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
Yes.
think something you're touching on also is something that some people will not see because we often talk about recognizing, well, it's become a very hot topic to set boundaries, right? So it's like the whole
Yes.
world is trying to set boundaries right now.
Just put up a
Yeah,
wall.
exactly. And I think something that many people who move countries or end up, it doesn't really matter the details of the situation, right? Basically, you're not living in your home country. Um, the nuance in that conversation kind of changes because we, when we talk about setting boundaries, I think we often think about inside of a contained circumstance, environment, or society. So at work or in like when I go to deal with my family or I go to deal with this, like, you know, ex of mine or something, right? So very precise, specific circumstances versus I think what you're kind of touching on is something that I know as well, something that shifts inside of your ability to see where you came from and see where you are now and kind of decide for yourself, all right, what is society? What is culture? What is tradition? What is my personal family's history? What is my friend's personality? Like you can kind of get through all those layers in a way that somebody who has never left the country may not be able to. Do you see where I'm going? So it's
Yes.
kind of this like,
Yes.
this area I've personally found is very difficult to explain to people who have never left, say, my hometown, right? My friends, because when we talk about, it could be something similar to you, the resistance and others, or the what I don't say resistance. I often use ignorance or just other like stronger terms.
Yeah.
But but they're kind of like, yeah, okay, so just like, yeah, set those boundaries, and then like the end. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like it's so much more complicated than just go cut these people off. These people are your connections back to your home, your roots, right? Like your home
Your
country, your
roots.
culture, your
Yeah.
everything. You can't just cut off a whole country, even if you see problems inside of the way that people behave, right? You can't just go and reject it entirely because in some ways,
Yes.
how would you reconcile that in yourself, right?
Yeah. And you know what? My values have actually really helped me with this because a lot of the time I am going I'm approaching a conversation or a situation with the goal of connection instead of trying to be hard or seen, even if it's a wound that's probably might be triggered by this person or like they put me through a lot of things. It's more like when I go with that value of mine, okay, my value is connection, and this is what I'm going to focus on. It really, it breaks away a lot of resistance for me, and also my triggers are less, they're softer, because I know the goal, and I have made this decision that this is a person that's probably going to be in my life for
Mm,
my entire life.
mm,
And I accept the fact that maybe they may never wake up,
mhm,
if, or maybe they will. I accept that fact, and I am okay to, connect with them where they're at.
yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's the best thing. That's the best way I can put that forward in my experience. How I think I've been able to break through that.
I think it gives you a little bit of space also inside of yourself. You can find a bit more peace, dare I say, right? Because you know you're not responsible for the timeline of that other person. And it's not this sort of condescending, I'm better than you, I've awakened, I'm enlightened, I transcended this
I know
attitude,
better. I
right?
am a
Yeah, yeah.
hypnotherapist. So like
I'm gonna be over
I
here. I'm gonna wait for you to figure it out, right?
you should listen to
Yeah,
me.
I know. Yeah, yeah, but it's oh God, oh my God, all our mothers. I just heard all of them, right? Yeah,
All our ancestors are just
yeah,
like
I know. Lord, yeah. So I feel like what you're saying is a really healthy balance. So I appreciate you sharing that. If you don't mind me asking directly, do you think it's a little bit of imposter syndrome that you had or sometimes still have with English, let's say? Because I also want to put this in the context of you living now in Australia and things that come from being a I don't like to say this word because I feel like there are better words to say. I use the word international. Most people use the word foreign. So a foreign person, in society. Yeah.
yes.
What would you kind of, or can we kind of unpack this?
Um, for me, I guess it was definitely probably imposter syndrome, not feeling enough, because aside from the connection of learning language at such a young age, and obviously having no option, this is just the way it is. I also had a bigger goal to always, I'm learning English now so that in case I have to speak to, we call
Mm,
them the foreign people, or
nice.
I don't know how to say it, the white people, we call
I
them
know.
Mzungu.
Yeah.
We call them Bazungu. So like the bigger goal was always like, so whenever I speak to a Mzungu, I will be able to, speak to them and connect with them. It
Mm,
was always just not feeling enough.
mm,
And it's not even just me. I feel like it's a generational thing, because our parents they also had to go through that, and they thought this is what would be better for my child, so I'm gonna
mm,
do this.
yeah.
So it was just the ignorant. They didn't know. They knew this was the best thing. They just know this was the better
The
thing to
thing,
do,
yes.
and let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the cultural shock that I experienced was really not feeling like I belonged
Mm,
to. Now it was from context, it was from Uganda, where we're all Ugandans, and you will see a Muzungu once in a while, and you get excited, you speak with them, and I'm like, oh my god, like my English, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Now it was I
Mm,
am the I am Ugandan in like a lot of Bazungu, and it was like,
yeah.
what? This is such. I don't know how to like. It was. I think it was overwhelming as well to just
Mm,
move country and just feel like I didn't belong, feel I wasn't enough,
yeah.
and yes, the imposter syndrome as well. Um, yes, I feel like that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think is so unfair about that, by the way, is that English is a language you were forced to learn. And for me, I have strong feelings about had to learn it, even if you didn't live inside an English, like what we consider native English speaking country, right? There are other native languages that were deprioritized so that English could come through. And then here you kind of fully like able to use the language, right? But because of the way that there are other kind of perception based things at work, other ways people are seeing you, evaluating you, judging you, I feel that that's not, it's just not fair to, it's a Michelle thing. It's not like a universal thing, but it's not fair. Michelle thinks it's
No,
not
I
fair for
feel it.
Patra, right? To basically go through this because even for me, and I always say that if my family didn't choose to immigrate to the US, and I'm not talking like white collar immigration. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking like flee country immigration. So this
Yeah.
type of immigration, you really are, it's up to chance to decide where you end up. I could have ended up in a different country, right? That wasn't an English speaking country, and then had a totally different life. So it's by luck that I became so lucky, I think, to have I just use the same word, but to have this type of multilingual experience and one inside of an English speaking country. I find that it's completely, yeah, I feel like it's personally, on a personal level, it's unfair. I
And
do
no,
think,
it is. I
yeah.
have felt like that as well. In fact, I have, I do have my, reserved wishes of, I just wish this was something that was taught in schools.
Mm,
Because to tell you, I cannot write my mother tongue language, yet I speak it so fluently.
mm,
So that is something that I feel was robbed and it's still
yeah,
being robbed.
yeah,
But this goes to a very larger problem in Uganda that would become very political, and it's still very unsafe to speak about that even right
mm,
now.
mm-hmm,
And that's why I feel like I have made peace with a lot of the unfair stuff that have happened,
mm-hmm,
and I have made a choice to choose, with my family or with the friends that I still have, to choose connection and be there for them
yeah,
when they don't have someone else to just be there.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that brings
absolutely.
a
It makes
bigger
sense.
picture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
it does.
And now we we leave our countries and we come to, Western developed countries to make money and all that. But then background, we are Ugandan. That is our heritage. And I feel like that is our heritage we should be really proud of.
Mm,
And those are legacies we're passing down. It's very unfair to do that to our children,
yeah,
to not make them, especially something as valuable as language.
yeah,
And I think even speaking about this now, like my body is still going into like that vulnerable mode.
mm,
But it's just some things that you see, and like I said, I just know how to really be there and not, take on responsibility and, you know, react or do all these things. Yet I can connect, and maybe hopefully that will do something, because
mm-hmm,
but yeah, I just feel like it's so unfair that we would do that to
yeah,
our children.
yeah,
It would be even something as simple, just listen to
yeah,
songs from your countries, like Luganda songs. That's something that is so valuable.
yeah,
But we just, want to erase ourselves off the earth. That's what
yeah,
I see it as. Just like, what are we, like, do we hate ourselves so much? Oh, our
yeah,
heritage, oh, our ancestors are,
yeah,
it's so deep, and it gets very, very painful
yeah,
really quick.
yeah,
But yeah, I guess that's something that I wanted to say.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. The you talked about how our parents and ancestors did not really know what they were doing when they were making these choices necessarily,
Yeah.
right? I think I did, even if they were intentionally making them, they never went that layer deeper to examine the repercussions of such a decision, right? Because definitely it followed, I think, a massive trend, which was basically feel a lot of shame for being born into the lesser cultures of the world and work
Yeah.
to get your child to be as close to the thing in power, which changed based on history, right? And where you lived and a lot of other reasons, right? But for a lot of
Yeah.
people was either the British Empire, the French Empire, or you know what I mean? There were a few different ones. Now,
Yes.
the difficulty I think that many of us in this day and age are facing is okay, so we recognize we all have different ways of handling that with family, right? We can recognize it. What I notice in my conversations with others is, okay, so then what will I do about it? Because maybe you met a partner who is not from the same background as you, right? And or even if
Yes.
from the same cultural background, you guys have different philosophies on this. Or maybe you and your partner both moved to a new country, and also there's like 3 or 4 other cultures now in the mix, right? Or it could really be split into a lot of different cases. So I'll ask you if you can talk about a little bit how you're handling this with your kids right now. And actually with your partner too, if you're comfortable with that. Make him learn the
So
freaking
how
language, is what I'm saying.
No, I love that you said that. So thank you for calling me out. But yes, so I do love what you said of what am I gonna do about this? That was so powerful because that personal responsibility is something that up to now a lot of I think multicultural people still avoid. Like you
Yes.
can do something about it.
Yeah.
So well, I guess what I am doing is I do try to get into the community. I want my children to be aware of the language, the food, and I get my partner to get into that community as well. He
Mm-hmm.
does know a few Luganda words, which is very I think it's really good that he does. The other thing that I really do with my daughters is we just learn a few words. Some words they will just speak in my mother tongue, which honestly makes me proud when I. No offense if anyone from my community is hearing this, but when I go in the community and I hear that, oh, they can speak that. Oh, mine cannot. It's something that
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, obviously, I think being multicultural, this is something that I learned growing up. I just know how to not be, what do you mean? Or like change my face. I'm just like, I'm just very proud in that moment. My children know this and they know the language. We watch, you know, there's this YouTube channel that all the all the songs that I grew up hearing,
Mm-hmm.
they love those songs. They will, sing them. And that is something that I am doing. And even like when I am thinking of going back to Uganda or even speaking with them, I am just sometimes intentional and I will speak in my language.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my children are very aware that mom speaks 2 different languages. And one of them is just so interested and she'll look at me. And it's just that is something that I'm doing about it. My inner critique would tell me that you should be doing more, blah 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 blah. There's other families, but like
Yeah.
to be honest, me and my partner are different cultures. He's English speaking, so even if I did more, probably could, but like it's just I am compassionate that's I'm doing something. Just
Yeah.
you know, perf- perfect is great, but done is better.
Yeah.
That's a yeah.
Yeah. Plus you are doing not just something, but it's your part and their part also individually. And so even if you put them through let's just take the most extreme, like you sent them off, right? Like go and be immersed in this, you know, I don't know, school environment, social environment, whatever. Actually doesn't work because it's all in English in your country. So basically it would backfire. But
Yeah, they would
you know what I
probably
mean.
do
Yeah.
exactly what all the
Yeah.
other, I mean, what I did.
Yeah.
But I will say the reason why I say I probably can do better is because I have cousins who are Dutch.
Mm.
Their dad is Dutch, and they did grow up in Uganda. And their father, obviously, my auntie, she was speaking English and Luganda. They did know a bit of Luganda when they were younger, but their father spoke Dutch until they grew up, and now they speak fluent Dutch.
Mm.
So that's why my inner critic gets really loud because it was like,
I
if
see.
he could do it, it was in Uganda, it wasn't in Netherlands,
Right.
and he was able to do it.
Right.
So I guess that's why I don't know. I think it is very possible to do more, but that's why
Yeah.
I think yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes. And also with the caveat of it doesn't all fall on you, right? So
Yeah.
my piece
Oh, thank
on,
you for
like, for
saying that.
instance, it really doesn't, because I've seen it so many times, even in my own family. Everyone grew up Mandarin speaking in my family. How many people in my generation are fluent? Not 100%. So I'm just going to, my family hates me anyway, so whatever. Like, but my generation really hates me. But I am one of the only ones that is so comfortable with the language. And it's also because I had the longest exposure time to my grandparents. And so that
Yeah.
is very, very different. And it was an intentional choice to be close with them, to maintain that connection even into adulthood. They passed recently, but it's like the that was on me to step into, and that's why it's also not just on the biological parent or on, do you see what I mean? It's also on the kid
Yeah.
themselves to grow up and decide that they actually want to stay with the language. And I put myself through an immersion program in China because I didn't feel like my Chinese was definitely, on the reading and writing side, was not good enough. And so but that was like me. It was not because, family could have done more. And I think if family did do more, I probably wouldn't have chosen it, to be honest. I probably would have been like, this is so annoying. Like, why do I need this, right? Like, why do I need this stupid language? It's so hard, right? So I just
Oh
want
my
to give you some
God.
grace, okay, with this,
This
because
puts, yeah. Thank you for saying that because it puts a lot of things into perspective for me. And, my daughters are young, but I love that you still did that. You made that choice. And yeah, it just puts things really into perspective for me. And it also gives me even more grace that, you know,
mm,
yeah, thank
well,
you.
you're doing, I know your work on, like, I follow you online. I know what your work is about. You are doing, I think, just like beyond what the average person is already doing, okay, in terms of, there's only 24 hours in a day. We are only, like, we are human. We cannot be doing everything, so
Yes.
yeah, just remember that, okay? I want to go into how specific circumstances, if you're comfortable, in Australia, things that you may have experienced being, we're just going to say it, being not white, right? Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, how you actually feel. Do people compliment you on your English in Australia, or is it
Yes.
okay? How does that feel?
A whole lot of times.
Yeah.
It's always like, where are you from? I'm from Uganda. Okay. Your English sounds really good. Yes, because we study and speak English. Okay. It's that
Yeah.
every single time when someone
Yeah.
new speaks with me,
Yeah.
they will ask that question.
Yeah.
And at the moment, in the beginning, it was always like this badge of honor I wore. Oh, my English is actually really
Mm,
good. And then it became really quickly, it was like, what do you mean?
yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And then it shifted quickly to, yeah, I mean, we studied English because we're colonized and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
So it's like a whole lot of stages that
Yeah.
went through with that question. And right now, it's always right now because, I'm healing and I don't want to give anyone the opportunity or even the slight, I don't want to give my power away to make, like, for them to make me feel a type of way I don't want to
Yeah.
feel, like angry or that.
Mm.
So it's always like I am answering the question and that's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll get awkward looks and I will give it back and that's it. It's just
Yeah.
like I'm just more neutral with it because I just don't want to feel, I just don't want to give my power away, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
It completely makes sense. And I have to tell you, I have never once thought to compliment someone on their English ever, ever, right? Or like, it doesn't even matter where you came from originally, ever. Like, it's something so strange. And
It's
I get
very
this, yeah,
strange. Yeah, it's very, yeah, when you say it like that, it's really strange. Like, what do you mean? There's a lot of layers that would come with that.
yeah,
And I think that's why I made a decision to not give that power away. I'm happy with myself. And I think there's a stage where it was more like a blaming thing. Like, okay, so because I'm black, I cannot speak good English.
yeah,
Or because I'm not from America, like,
yeah.
African America
I
and stuff
know.
like
Oh my
that.
God.
Like,
Like,
oh, because I'm
separate,
not that, then I cannot
separate
speak good
episode.
English.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I also get some compliments of they think I'm from America because of
Mm.
the English, and it's like, first of all, the accent is very
Very
different.
different. Yeah. Like, really, I think everyone listening is like, what?
Like it's
Yeah.
just like it's so it used to do my head in, and that's why I made a decision to stop. I'm not giving anyone my power, and I'm just gonna see it as neutral. You're asleep or you're awake.
Mm.
That's okay.
Mm. It is condescending. I actually do think it's that, even if it's not
It
intended to
is.
be, it does
Yeah,
come off that way. Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah.
And you know, I feel like when I wore it as a badge of honor, when I was complimented, you have really good English, because okay, now all the education I have really done is now paying off.
Mm.
But it was something else that it was doing. It was making me even more forget and identify more as, the English person.
Right.
So now I have to, in very subtle ways, I am starting to change the tone. It's like a full identity change,
Yeah.
which the other way it was more like free, and now it's more serious. And the vocabulary wound was just now very amplified.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm not saying it right, or I'm not doing. It's not enough English. I don't know enough words in English.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did a lot subconsciously,
Mm.
but I feel like when you start to take out all these layers and all these parts, you realize how the whole system is just like
Yeah.
BS. It's
Yeah.
a complete, yeah, it's chaos. When you're multicultural or multilingual and you speak more than one language, you cannot really see the subtle ways that you're actually identity shifting, which is okay,
Right.
but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's very, I do not know a word to even fit into
Mm.
that, but
Mhm.
I guess that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
That's the piece that comes back again. A lot of people talk about when you change your language, you change your world, right? And I do really believe that what you're honing in on, this different identities thing, I tend to say it's different versions of me, but I will absolutely agree that I do have to shift and change when I'm in different languages. And that is we go again, we bring it back to, that's the weirdness of being given a so-called compliment for something that you've already taken into as one of your identities or your variations on your identity. So it's a little bit like, well, why wouldn't I have this as a piece of me, right? Because it is so formative, it came so early. It's so complicated. I do hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, it's a compliment. Why wouldn't you be happy about it? Right. And I do think we're kind of getting into the reasons why people would not be happy to be complimented on a language that they learned and speak every day. Right.
And it's good.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's good?
Obviously. Like,
It's a lot. Like it's something that's so deep to uncover.
yeah.
And it and it's very important because I'm a firm believer that we have so much power in our voice. It's like an expression of ourselves, and that's where we get to express with language as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to not be important is just it's mind-boggling for me.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it also implies that the other person is part of the group that gets to validate who is good or bad inside of the language when you are also part of the group that speaks the language. So you're also, you do what I mean? Like you're all in, and they're like making
Yeah.
these micro divisions, right? I'm trying to like talk through why it's so annoying, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can let it all out.
Yeah. Okay, so identity. How do you see your identity shifting then inside the languages?
um so it's very nuanced, and honestly, even when I am learning or attempting to learn a new language, I like the theory part and the translation. But most things that really excite me are the nuances, like the expressions
Mm,
of. So I can say the same thing in Luganda, and it can be very funny.
mm-hmm.
And my tone, like the tone, the gesture, and
Mm,
everything is just different. And I would say the same thing in English, and it will be so plain.
mm,
And if I use the same nuances, the tone and the gestures, it would be received very differently.
right.
That's how I see how that's why I see it as more of like, it's not just language, it's like for obviously connection purposes and communication. Like you can say the same thing and it will be seen so differently. That's why I feel like it's more of like you have to change
Mm,
to be able to be
mm,
received.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
That's why I see it as it's like a little micro, identity. This is what I'm expressing, and this is how I am, like,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
even in Luganda, it's like, okay, this is just how I am, and this is how.
Yeah.
It's also brought a lot of understanding, honestly, for me, because being, I know how to tell different tones, but also I know how those tones can really change.
Mm-hmm.
And one memory that comes to mind, I used to work with, I'm not being stereotypical or anything, but I used to work with this Indian girl and I was a chef. So whenever it was order time, it's stressful and all that, the voice changed in
Mm,
English. It was like just it really changed. But in that moment, I was able to understand this is probably how it is in probably their language.
mm,
But if I wasn't multilingual,
mm.
it would be a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess that's why I see it as just like a little micro
Mm-hmm.
or an identity shift,
Mm-hmm.
dare I say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think that dimension of you can see that it's the other person's background, their culture, their identity in another language that's superimposed onto the new language or whatever language you're communicating with, right? That's
Yeah.
influencing the output and not them intentionally acting in a certain way. This has actually come up in my life quite a lot when I'm on different teams and people are arguing with each other and I'm kind of there. I'm like, it dawned on me at one point. I'm like, I think I'm the only one who speaks like, different language, or at least thinks about it in this way. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. So I see what's going on here. The monolingual people don't understand that the multilingual people aren't intentionally trying to be assholes. They are just not expressing it in the way that we're used to with the English language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that the nuances. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel like your personality changes, or your behavior, or do you feel like you're more, many people say they're like introverted, extroverted, differences. Do you have words that you can put on your language identities?
That's a really good question. I would say in the past, I probably did have a different personality.
Mm.
When I was speaking English, I was more, confident, alive, but then I was also like hiding in a way. Sorry, I'm looking outside because the sprinkler just came on, and the other
That's
time
okay.
the window was open and the water just went in. So I just
Oh
like,
no.
okay, now we're not sorry. So on
Yeah.
a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, but now I do notice a shift because I know I will be received differently
Mm.
if I did bring my whole grounded self
Mm.
into this.
Mm-hmm.
So I still notice a few shifts, but it's not as, I think, rigid, or like it felt most like trapped, like how it used to
Mm.
be. Like I felt like I couldn't express myself in one language than
Yeah.
the other.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you had to like cut and modify and change for that language. Is that
Yes,
right?
I
Yeah.
had to. Yeah. And whereas now I can bring the whole self, but because I can tell there's probably a few things that are not going to be received in the way I intend to.
Mm.
So now it's more, now I can feel it. I'm more aware when I'm changing the language.
Yeah.
And I never used to do that because it was more blind. It was more, if I change this, now I'm Patra, who is like
Mm.
bright
Mm.
personality. And if I change this, oh, now I'm like, I don't have a filter or anything. And now
Mm.
it's, yeah, so it's more, now I'm more aware when I change the language. I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to be received. So, but this
That's
is
so
what I want to
interesting.
say.
Yeah, that's something I've done too, right? So, and it's only when I realized I was changing languages, and that's because I had to add a third language, and I was like, oh, and it was made known to me over and over again. Wow, so English and Mandarin, oh, and French. So, like, it was other people telling me what languages I was speaking because I wasn't even aware when I was switching between. I mean, obviously, I knew when I would use different languages, but it's like what you were saying. I was literally flipping between different Michelles. And now when I use English or Mandarin, it's not flipping into different Michelles. It's obviously you have to scale it and adapt it for the cultural nuances of communication.
Yes.
But I'm not changing myself. And that I think is really powerful and
Yeah.
really
It's very,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, that's
And
exactly what I meant.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like we should, the industry of language,
Mm.
I feel like we should have more grace, and especially with people learning different languages and such comments. Imagine someone just learned English and they're being told, oh, your English is, and probably they're already like self aware, my English is whatever word they're going to use.
Yeah.
I feel like even in English teaching, they should be more teachers that really teach those little expressions that
Mm.
would, help,
Mm-hmm.
or, help the other person feel more like I'm sitting into like a new language. This
Mm-hmm.
is me, but like I can do this. I think it's pretty
Mm.
cool, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like being multi multicultural or multilingual, it's usually seen as like an advantage. And it's always, I've seen this somewhere, I don't remember, that would be like, oh, if you speak one or more or one or two languages, then you're like smarter, or if your child does this. And it feels like more of like an asset than an actual like
Burden.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
like an actual like balance. And people probably do even underestimate the actual hard work that
Yeah.
goes into even knowing, not learning, knowing two
Yeah.
languages.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And obviously those the cultural stereotypes who like want to say, oh, your English is really good.
Yeah.
Is it because of how I look? Is it because of
Yeah.
this? It's Yeah, that's all I think I could say. I don't know how to put that in like really
I call
the
it,
right words.
no, I mean, so the first part, absolutely, the industry does not, and when I say industry, there's no standard internationally on how people educate in languages. So perhaps
Yeah,
inside of a country, they have their own program or their own curriculum, but there's nothing that has made this standard across the world, yet it seems to be kind of all different versions of the same. Like, we're going to teach you a lot of grammar, we're going to teach you a lot of like advanced vocabulary, we're going to put you
so
inside of,
rigid.
right? Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's that I personally will not touch, because I know that that sort of institution will take forever to break down. So that's why in my work I go straight to the people. I go straight to the source, right? Like, for if you want to work with me, right, go to you. I don't go to the random department or ministry or whatever that oversees this, because by the time they get what I'm saying, because we're something that you and I can talk about, or like clients and professionals in other places, right, can talk about in 5 minutes, they are going to take 500 billion years to get the first point, right? So I've
yes.
given up on that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fight I gave up on. I think
Yeah.
when I was speaking earlier, I gave up on it and, you know, chose something else, chose the value
Yeah.
and, went with that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the second part of I call it the burden of multilingualism or multiculturalism, because you're right. A lot of people, especially I see this in families that I think they're trying to overcorrect for what they consider the mistakes of the past. And so it's very interesting being a minority person, being told I have an advantage or a privilege to be what I am, because I was raised bilingual, again by my own choice as well, right? But that I had the privilege to have access to that. Okay, a little weird to get, right, as a comment, but it's sort of there's a whole wave, especially in my local area, my hometown area. There are so many families that want to send their kids through different types of immersion schools, and they do, for instance, like math and Spanish and history and French and like whatever, and they are absorbing, I guess, different languages, 4 to 5 of them within their whole like K to 12 years. So I I personally wouldn't do that for like as a parenting choice. I wouldn't do it, right? But like in terms of what I see in terms of the trend, it's like, oh, it could only be good. It can only be great. It could only be fantastic that you have all of these tools and skills. It's kind of like knowing how to play multiple sports, right? Or like knowing different instruments, like language too, right? And it's like, no, I mean, yes, in a certain circumstance, like if you need to use it for work, it could be good. But if you actually want to know what it is to be a multilingual or multicultural speaker and person in this world, there is a burden and there is a responsibility and there is something that comes that's deeper than just the surface level language. And I think that's the part that a lot of people cannot get because they didn't live this. So
Yeah.
I think definitely, thank you for bringing that up, because that's definitely a point that, again, I have no solution to. Most of these things, I have no solutions. I swear to God, this stupid podcast is
You
just for
don't have
me to like give a space. I'm like, I know when you were like, you don't have to problem solve. I'm like, but I'm trying to problem solve like all the time, you know?
to. Yeah.
I really feel that this is the most that I can do. Just make the space to bring these your experiences, other people's experiences into the light and show that this is something real that happens. What comes out of it, I can't control, but this at least is, what is within my capabilities.
I feel like it's so powerful though that you're doing that.
Thank you. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work, so
So
I appreciate that.
it is a lot of work. I honestly, it is a lot of work, but like I can tell you're so passionate about it, and you know, you've done it. I didn't even know I would have something like this to speak about language and how that has affected me and how I've navigated
Mm.
my life being multicultural. And I feel like this space, you've probably changed my life if
Oh,
even just speaking on the podcast. So it is a lot.
thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for saying that. Well, okay, thank you for being here. But before we go, I'm gonna give you the floor to kind of talk a little bit about your work because it does cross over. We talk generational patterns, right? So,
Yeah, I am. I honestly, I obviously I learned hypnotherapy because one, I wanted to be a psychologist growing up, and I have a passion for helping people. I am the kind of person who wants to learn about you, and I feel like everyone is just so important.
mm,
And my experiences made me want to learn more about myself. And then I realized I wanted to help people as well. Two, hypnotherapy it's much deeper work than just, I'm not discrediting traditional therapy. It's much deeper. And as someone who has seen those layers of conscious, unconscious, subconsciously, generational, I felt like hypnotherapy was as close as I could get with that.
mm,
And becoming a mom made me really passionate about helping moms uncover those limiting beliefs even about motherhood, the voices of their past and their generations that have been going on for generations, for years, and they probably don't even know that.
mm,
So I am self-concept hypnotherapy. I do, identity work, generational patterns, generational healing,
mm,
and emotional regulation.
mm,
I feel like where we're going in society, it's going to be a lot of uncovering all these deeper things that, I feel like this is the time to do it. It's been a long time coming and it's been building up, and now this is the time to, liberate humanity or liberate ourselves from the past.
mm, mm,
And yeah, so I have my program, which is Holistic Balance Accelerator, and it's for the moms who's ready to shatter those generational patterns, to build that emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and be that model for their children, be that calm, confident role model and leader of their family,
mm,
to build those legacies of children who are more emotionally intelligent. They are resilient. They can also identify, things like this, the nuances, the start of things that have been unheard and
mm,
unturned.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and my Instagram handle is the Aligned Mama.
Yeah.
Changing that name, I, it was so scary. I thought about it for
Yeah.
like 3 months, and I'm like, I want to change my name to the Aligned Mama, but
Wait, what was
oh,
it before?
it was my name.
Okay, because when I
Yeah, it
connected
was,
with you, and this is really it just shows how deep and personal I can get with the right people in a very short amount of time because I only connected with you a few months ago and you were already under that name.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? My life has just opened up,
Mm,
and I don't feel so alone anymore. Honestly, seeing your posts makes me even more stronger to, say no, put my foot down. Like,
mm,
what do you mean?
Mm,
I have these powerful women around me.
yeah.
So I am not alone. And before it was just, you know, I have connected with a lot of moms, I'm not going to lie, with my social media. But before that, I just felt alone. I felt like,
Mm,
being self aware it just felt lonely. And
yeah.
my world has just opened up, really.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how that happens? By the way, the more self-aware you are, the lonelier it can get because you start to see how much you brought up. I think you brought up BS before, right? But all the sort of superficial nonsense that circulates and what we think is closeness or we think is friendships or connections is really just it's a lot of crap actually. And I don't think those who
Yeah.
are looking for that deep inner personal journey and it can be in any sphere. It could be language. It could be looking at your own family. It could be right. There's so many different ways to go, but if you're not there, you're not there. Do you know what I mean? And once you get there, you realize, okay, this is a personal space.
Yeah. This is something, it's so sacred as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And also realizing how many connections you've had that are just trauma bonds,
yeah.
and breaking out of that is
Yes.
so it can be hard, but you just have to rip the band-aid off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That overlaps with what I talk about also with culture. It's never a connection I've made publicly, but I'll do it now. Trauma bonding can also show up when people think it's culture. So, okay, I'm gonna connect with this person from my home country because we were both like inside of this broken model and we don't have time to go deeper into
And
all
that's
that,
the
but
reason that you're
yeah,
connected.
that's the reason. It's and something I always ask people, and it's really a philosophical question, but it's like, are the toxic aspects of a culture, how do we see them? And there's no international or universal panel on what is toxic or not, but definitely certain things from the past we can all identify in our own cultures, in our own families' histories, in our own traditions that when you talk about breaking cycles, right, it's also that separating out what is culture, what is tradition, what is literally stuff that you don't need to hold on to anymore as representations of you, right? And
Yeah.
for sure, I think a lot of people, you and I have talked about the old world mindset stuff, but a lot of my friends who are from East Asian cultures really struggle with this right now because they were raised to think that those cultures represented a certain model that they are not necessarily comfortable carrying on to their children. But does that mean giving up on what they were told this entire time was them? So it gets very, very complicated. Nuanced is a word that comes up every single day, but I think life is nuanced. I think you do too, right? Like
Yeah.
we can't avoid it. We just have to learn how to work our way through it, I think.
Yeah. I can have a whole conversation with you for like a week, honestly.
I know. I know. Let's book a
But
retreat somewhere.
let's do it. Yeah, just it just makes me so grateful for tools like technology.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine you lived your whole life somewhere, and I lived my whole life somewhere, and we
Yeah.
did connect?
Yeah.
That Yeah, that would have been sad, but I'm
I
just
know.
glad.
I
Yeah.
know. I know. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here because shout out to technology for sure. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for all the things. I mean, of course, it has given us a lot of other problems, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But also, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to talk with me. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me as well,
Yeah.
and for your perspective, your passion, and your attention to the details. It just always blows my mind because, I wish I was like you a lot of the times. I'm like, if I always tell myself, just embody Michelle's,
No,
assertiveness,
what?
and then I'll do it because
My God,
she
Michelle
can
is a
do
mess.
it.
I am.
If she can do it, I can do it. So
That's not untrue. Yes, that is. I am very pro kind of like what is it called, like graceful failure or whatever it is. Like it's not perfect. It's not at all. It's never what I think it will be. But it's like just go and do it and fearlessly. I think is
yeah,
probably the word. Yeah.
yeah. But just so you know, I am a mess too, so it's okay. I can take the mess because I'm
Yeah.
also a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.